Oh, wow. Well, that was a very, very nice marmalade sandwich, if I say so myself. What did you say, Clapham? I've got marmalade on my face. Is it gone now? Oh, good. Okay. So we'll carry on with the story. Mr. Brown led the way to a waiting taxi. "Number 30 to Windsor Gardens, please," he said. The driver stared at Paddington. "Bears is extra," he growled. "Sticky bears is twice as much. And make sure none of it comes off of my interior. It was clean when I set out this morning." The sun was shining as they drove out of the station, and there were cars and big red buses everywhere. Paddington waved to some people waiting at a bus stop, and several of them waved back. It was all very friendly. Paddington tapped the taxi driver on his shoulder. "It isn't a bit like darkest Peru," he announced. The man jumped at the sound of Paddington's voice. "Cream?" he said bitterly. "Cream and jam all over me coat?" He slid the little window behind him shut. "Oh dear, Henry," murmured Mrs. Brown. "I wonder if we're doing the right thing." Fortunately, before anyone had time to answer, they arrived at Windsor Gardens, and Judy helped Paddington onto the pavement. "Now you're going to meet Mrs. Bird," she said. "She looks after us. She's a bit fierce at times, but she doesn't really mean it. I'm sure you'll like her." Paddington felt his knees begin to wobble. I'm sure I shall, if you say so," he replied. "The thing is, will she like me?" "Goodness gracious!" exclaimed Mrs. Brown. "What have you got there?" "It's not a what," said Judy. "It's a bear called Paddington, and he's coming to stay with us." "A bear?" said Mrs. Bird, as Paddington raised his hat. "Well, he has good manners. I'll take that for him." "I'm afraid I stepped on a jam tart by mistake," said Paddington. "I can see that," said Mrs. Bird. "You better have a bath before you're very much older. Judy can turn it on for you. I dare say you'll be wanting some marmalade too." "I think she likes you," whispered Judy. Paddington had never been in a bathroom before, and while the water was running he made himself at home. First of all he tried writing his new name in the steam on the mirror. Then he used Mr. Brown's shaving foam to draw a map of Peru on the floor. It wasn't until a drip landed on his head that he remembered what he was supposed to be doing. He soon discovered that getting into a bath is one thing, but it's quite another matter getting out again, especially when it's full of soapy water. Paddington tried calling out, "Help!" at first in a quiet voice so as no one to disturb anybody. Then very loudly, "Help! Help!" When that didn't work, he began bailing the water out with his hat, but the hat had several holes in it, and his map of Peru soon turned into a sea of foam. Suddenly, Jonathan and Judy burst into the bathroom and lifted a dripping Paddington onto the floor. "Thank goodness you're all right," cried Judy. "We heard you calling out." "Fancy making such a mess," said Jonathan admiringly. "You should have pulled the plug out." "Oh," said Paddington, "I never thought of that." When Paddington came downstairs, he looked so clean no one could possibly be cross with him. His fur was all soft, and his silky nose gleamed, and his paws had lost all traces of the jam and cream. The Browns made room for him in a small armchair, and Mrs. Bird brought him a pot of tea and a plate of hot buttered toast and marmalade. "Now," said Mrs. Brown, "you must tell us all about yourself. I'm sure you must have had lots of adventures, but not like me, 'cause I've got funny accents from all over the world." "I have," said Paddington earnestly. "Things are always happening to me. I'm that sort of a bear." He settled back in the armchair. "I was brought up by my Aunt Lucy in darkest Peru," he began, "but she had to go into a home for retired bears in Lima." He closed his eyes thoughtfully, and a hush fell over the room as everyone waited expectantly. After a while, when nothing happened, they began to get restless. Mr. Brown tried coughing. Then he reached across and poked Paddington. "Well, I never," he said. "I do believe he's fast asleep." "After all that's happened to him," said Mrs. Brown. "Is it any wonder?" And there he is, fast asleep. Which is where, my little bears, you're going to go now soon. And I'm going to go and wash my face. Yes, I know, Clapham, you were right. I do have marmalade on my face. Anyway, night-night, my beautiful, beautiful bears.